Good morning, Blue. Thank you so much for being with us here today as we get to talk with the one and only Mickie Murphy. Mickie, thank you for being here today.
It's my pleasure.
It's been just over a year since your accident. Earlier this year, Michelle Trowell asked you if you were ready to speak on it. Now we're here, right? When we started talking about this, you mentioned that you have a message about your experiences that have shaped who you are today. Not only that, but these can apply to everyone, right? Everyone that's listening here today, everyone that will listen after this, including new hires here at Blue in our experiences with one another. So, how are you feeling about our time together?
Oh, I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah.
Especially delighted to be with you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be with you and honored. So, there are 5 themes we will spend our time discussing today: community, faith, attitude, and change and resilience. But before we dive into that, can we take a moment to go back to July 2023? So it's July 12th, 2023, and you're driving home after spending time at the annual directors retreat in Cincinnati.
Yes. It was actually, there's a little more to the story because I had in December of 22 been elected by the directors as president of Blue Benefits. So it was pretty exciting. It's the first time a non-CPA had been made president, first time a non-owner. So this was new for my whole team. So the fact that I'd been asked to come do the president's, 10-minute update was pretty exciting, not just for me being new in that role, but for my whole team, because this gave Blue Benefits a whole line of hope and recognition that there was something else besides just doing the same stuff that they do every day. So it was just, the whole thing was pretty exciting. Great meeting. Enjoyed being there. All the directors there, a lot of nice feedback. The entities, different entity representatives were done a little bit before the directors. So I got in the car. I'm feeling pretty positive about this. It was in Lexington. So I'm driving back, just gotten around Cincinnati, and I was driving on the outside lane, see the car on the inside lane just speed up, and I'm going at speed already. So this guy just took off, and I'm thinking, what happened? And as I looked up, a minivan had came across the median, just flat out hit me full on. And I was aware of what was going on. So bag exploded, car spun, and I'm kind of sitting there and obviously dazed, but looking around my car. And I have to say, I went out and bought another Mazda, just like the one that I had, because hardly any damage to the interior. So I'm my logical brain is saying, okay, let's assess the situation. My bag is dumped out on the floor. I can't see my phone. Oh, that kind of looks like a compound fracture and leg's not moving too well. I'm slumped down. Wonder, how do I get help out in the middle of nowhere? Because I don't really know where I am. And this angelic voice comes to me over my left shoulder, and my window must have broken out, saying, "Is there somebody I can call for you?" And I said, "Yes, my husband." And I remember thinking, I must not have been talking to myself.
Yeah.
She heard me talking. And also, my husband's phone number is 1 digit off of mine, so I need to remember to give her the right number. So I did that, and she just said, "I have your wife on the phone," and handed it over to me. And I said, "Yeah, I've been in a car accident. You probably need to come." And he packed an overnight bag, thinking that, I talked to him, things might not be too rough. And this lovely young woman stayed in touch with him the entire time. The ambulance is coming. They're taking the jaws of life to get her out of the car. They're putting her in a helicopter and medevacing her. So he had the information the whole time and was able to drive straight there. No one else ever called him. So she's a real person. I've met her. She's delightful.
Yeah.
But an angel as well. What then proceeded is I was in ICU for a little while.
Yeah.
That was a Tuesday, if I remember correctly, and on Sunday my parents felt like they could leave because they had removed the ventilator tube. So it was a little while before I was actually able to have a conversation with anybody and
Right.
realize, this is what was going on. And as I've had stories kind of played back to me, I was communicating to them. I was on a lot of pain meds and stuff like that for a little bit, but I had my phone was locked, and my husband was trying to figure out who he need to contact besides Mike Fleetwood. So I had a friend tell me the other day, Joe told me that you drew in his hand my name. And I didn't remember that, but I remember her being in the emergency room or in, the ICU room to visit. I thought, well, how did Katie know? Well, I told her, make sure she knew. And so that was July 12th. And about the first week there.
Yeah. You would go on to spend 2 weeks in the ICU. Is that right?
Yes. And I think that was about 14 surgeries at that point.
14 surgeries.
Yeah.
And you were 5 days intubated.
Yes.
Okay. And 1 week later, your leg is amputated.
Yeah.
And this was after an intense infection. Was it to the bone?
It had gone to the bone. And it was a mess. I kept thinking, I wonder why they're not doing anything else about this. So when they came to me and said, this poor young man had to come tell me that this is what we recommend. We recommend amputation. And at that point, I was just like, take it off.
Right.
Because I know I can use the tools that are out there. I've seen people in wheelchairs and known plenty of people who we used prosthetics.
Yeah,
So,
modern medicine, right?
okay, let me go do the next thing because this is not going to work. So that's where we were after 3 weeks.
Because overall, you would spend 4 months in the Cincinnati hospital.
Yes.
3 hours away
Right.
from where you live.
Right.
So your husband was coming, family was coming.
Yeah.
And it was back and forth, right?
Right. So he, talk about PTSD. I think he probably had more of that than I did. I was lying in the bed doing what they told me.
Yeah.
I was casted up to my fingers and toes. On left leg was okay, but he was making that drive back and forth and trying to be with me and take care of all the things at home that we shared, taking care of, and 3 cats. What do you do with those?
Just 1 cat.
And his job and all those things. So yeah, it was a long time before we were moved up. I was moved up here to Carmel.
Yeah.
In late September.
Yeah. What was it like for you to be so far from home, family and friends?
They came to me. The problem wasn't for me being that far away because my mom and her husband came and would stay. My husband would come and stay. My best friend came at the end of July and stayed with me until September. And talk about a gift. I would not have been able to do that for her with the job that I have, but she was able to do that. Her husband sent her, Mickie needs you, go. And she was truly a gift. Yeah. But my son and his wife came, so I was never alone until I was in rehab, and I sent my mom home saying, I don't need to have you here all the time now. But at that point, I was able to use my hands and feed myself. I wasn't able to do that for months and months.
Really? So just relearning.
No, just having my hands released. I was in casts up to my fingers.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Yeah, up to my and even when they gave me softer ones, they were to here. And so yes, I did have a lot of bones broken and rebuilding. So I had to figure out how to hold things. And I had all that PT and occupational therapist while I was in the hospital. But I'm glad to say today that my grip is pretty normal.
Yeah.
I can open a pickle jar.
Oh, hey, that's hard. Okay. That's really hard. Just even thinking about your family, your friends, the people who came alongside you, that really pushes us into the themes of what we're talking about today. Yeah. So let's talk about community, right?
Okay.
When we say community, who comes to mind for you? Why is building a network of people so important?
Oh, it's important for so many reasons. And when we say community, to me, I have kind of overlapping communities, and they're networks that I've built for my whole adult life. The our lives change when we go outside of ourselves.
Yep.
And that's what community is for us, is when we find people who are like us in some way, sometimes not like us, but there's some common bond. It's really important for us to look for that. One of the smallest communities I have is my church. It's a little bitty congregation, but it's just maybe 50 people on a packed day. But it's that. It extends into the diocese and the national level, because I've gone and said, let me help. What else can I do? So I've been on the finance committee for the diocese, which covers all the churches in a region. And then the national group, I've done things for that. So when I went to the synod meeting this past year, with national meeting, I had people coming saying, oh, are you Mickie? Because they had heard through this network of people. That group is important to me for those reasons. But I also, the thing that I encourage people to do most is with work. Find people who are doing something similar to you or in a similar situation, and make them your people.
Right.
And then love your peeps, right? We'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's the important piece of that is going beyond yourself. I've also belonged to a group of, it's turned out to be all women, who run or own TPA practices, which is what we do with Blue Benefits is with retirement plans. And there are about 15 of us now. We've made sure that we don't cross over in each other's territory, kind of. But I wouldn't have made it through COVID and all the legal changes and all the requirements that we had to do work-wise if I didn't have this team of gals who are getting on the phone every week and going, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And none of us was alone having to do that. We had the community that gave us the ability to get through that together. That group came out of belonging to my professional organization, which is for people who do what I do.
Yeah.
And it's under the umbrella of kind of channels that are related to it, like investment advisors. So I have a lot of sideways community with that. When I was, I belonged to it for 30 years now, something like that. And I volunteered for that. I would, moderate panels for our conferences and things like that, or just volunteer, get to know the people who are running things, and get myself involved with that. I had no idea I knew so many people. I was just overwhelmed by flowers and cards and notes and people who knew me well enough to do something like send me a Barbie with a prosthetic leg and say, you're a badass girl.
Yeah.
Those people just enveloped me. And that's important when there's no catastrophe, when there's nothing that is happening other than you have every day, and all the little things and the big things like COVID, or what do I do? Is there somebody that I can ask, or is there somebody who just quit asking? Come sit with me and be quiet. Those types of relationships are priceless. We've tried really hard in BBC to build community where we have that. I won't say family. Family is different. Family is at home. But to have some sense of community where you work, and I know you do this, Bree, just so that we've got a place where we know we're comfortable, because I want people to know that if they have a problem, it's okay to ask.
Yeah.
If there's a mess up, it's okay to ask, how do I fix this? I'd much rather have somebody come and say, man, I don't even know what to do, than to sit there and spin wheels and be frustrated. So community is huge. Community is huge. And I didn't always know that, because I'm an introvert by nature, and going and trying to do new things, it was really hard for me as well, because I want to be perfect at it when I start.
I have that same problem.
Yes, I have very few regrets. One of them is never learning to ski because I couldn't figure out how to get up the first time, so I didn't want to be seen again.
Actually, right there with you.
Yeah.
I just don't do winter sports either.
No, no, this is on the water, but
oh,
yeah. So
yeah. And so would you say that the concept, the notion, the reality of community became clearer in a much more realistic way after the accident?
I would say that I had no idea that just being me and being a participant in the things that I do. I'm drawing circles because those circles were so much bigger than I had any idea.
Yeah.
It wasn't the little group of 50 people who meet in my church. It wasn't the 12 people on the BBC team. It wasn't the few people that I interact with on a regular basis in Blue. It would it just stretched out. I had people driving that distance from Blue that I just was surprised. I had Sarah Jacoby and Angie Zirkelbach showed up one day, or Michelle Trowell showed up one day with cards and gifts from people that were in her circle. So those circles just intertwine, and yes, it's life-giving.
Yeah.
But you don't find that unless you put yourself out there and you look for it.
Yeah.
And then part B is you find it and you find the people in there that you can be part of as well.
Yeah. Because I have a feeling you created that for a lot of people, right? This psychological safety that you were talking of, to sit, to own up to something, to be with, to literally just sit with. You created that for people. And so everybody else said, look, it's time for us to show up for Mickie. It's time for her worlds to collide for a little bit, right?
If you say so.
Yes.
I was blown out of the water. That just, it still amazes me. I have boxes of cards and just little gifts that people sent and they still do, checking in on you, girl.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. To be loved, right?
Yes.
An incredible thing.
It is. It's amazing.
The next thing you touch on is faith. So, we're talking about your little group, small but mighty, of 50 people at church.
Yeah.
But for anyone who doesn't know, your husband is a pastor and you're heavily involved with your church. However, that is not the sole aspect to this part of your story. Can you share more?
Yeah. So let's talk about faith for a minute.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I do believe in God and that we have a divine power. Not everybody does, but faith is believing in things or someone that you can't see. So even if you don't believe in a higher power, you can recognize that you need to have faith in something outside of yourself. Again, it's not all internal. There's something outside of yourself. I have faith in the goodness of not just God, but the goodness that is in other people. Faith that good things can happen even when everything around us seems like it's not good. And we see tidbits of that. If you look for it, you can find it. Beauty, purity, goodness, things that are lovely, even in stinky situations, right? And it is that. I will tell you that I I wore out a couple of the doctors apparently because one of them, I don't have no idea who I've told the story to before, but he kind of came in and, they check on every little thing. This particular guy kept coming in and checking to see if I could feel the back of my hands. Excuse me. Finally said, why do you keep doing this? Because we really didn't think you'd be able to feel that. Something happened with the nerve. Well, I have a little bit of numbness, but I could feel everything else.
Yeah.
And he said, well, we just really didn't expect that. And I said, well, you know why that is. And he said, I know God was holding your head. I said, okay, I'll quit telling him that. So I just think it's a choice to recognize whether there's something outside beyond you,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's God and you can have faith in God, or whether it's just in the fact that humanity continues to exist, and there's the world is not going to necessarily fall apart.
Yeah.
There's something else. There's something outside of us.
Yeah.
And faith, again, is a choice, whether you choose to believe in something or not.
Yeah.
And what you choose to believe in as well. And I know you have the next thing to
Yes, I do.
because I can roll right into that.
Well, I wanted to ask you, how did you lean into your faith when on the harder days, on the days when you're sitting and no one has showed up just yet? Maybe the doctor has just poked you for the 15th time that day. How did you lean into faith then?
I think at that point it's leaning into I know I have this thing. I have had this faith and it's there. It may not be that I right now I see it or I can tell what it is. But that's part of where your community comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I had people all across the country praying for me, literally.
Yeah.
And them reminding me that I have faith.
Yeah.
And we do that for each other. That I had a friend who was diabetic and she was going through another serious thing. And she told her husband one day, I don't believe in God. And he said, yes, you do. And she says, how do you know? He goes, because I know you. And that's part of who you are. And she said, okay. So that's what we do for each other and what our relationships and our community do for us as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very big on the act of joy, right? And
Yes.
Understanding that if I'm having a bad day, I will look outside of my window. If I see a bird, I'll go, okay, bird's still going, still singing, it's doing its thing.
Yeah.
And it's provided for and it will be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Birds are awesome.
So tell us about how the theme of attitude, Miss Badass, played a part in your recovery and who you are today.
Who I am today is probably not a whole lot different than who I was before. And through all this ordeal, we'll just call it ordeal. the thing that didn't change was, again, outside of myself. So the choice to believe that there's something outside of yourself, and then the choice every day to live in a way that reflects that. So my attitude is that I'm not the most important thing in this world. The other people are, and I can reflect that in what I do. So, and I would ask the nurse, what's good today? How many patients do you have? Oh, 7. That's a lot. Don't worry. I don't need a lot today. I'm here. Nothing's changing. So I'm not going to be pressing a button to get you in here. Whatever. But just treating other people like the nurse. Oh my gosh, nurses are amazing. Treating them like they're people.
Yeah.
I was in a trauma ward for months, and I could hear the helicopters on the weekends because they would bring them in. Cincinnati is a hospital trauma unit is there. And, gunshot victims and that. I couldn't believe the language that I would hear if the door was open coming from other patients toward the nurses. And so they would come to my room as a refuge.
Yeah.
Do you think I minded that at all? Oh, no.
Again, that's psychological safety. There you are, creating it for everyone around you.
So I had a nurse invite me to her wedding in Ireland. It's just awesome.
That's awesome.
But that's the whole point of it. Even if I was hurting, and even if I realized, yes, I'm lying here on my back. I don't like sleeping on my back, but I've been on my back for 3 months. This nurse is in here to do everything she can for me. And then figuring out, where's the bird? There was a night nurse who would come in and just flip on the light at 2 a.m. Hi, I'm here to do it. And you don't sleep a lot in the hospital. And she was a nice lady, but oh my gosh, I was so, so there were people that I prayed didn't come in my room at all, but there were plenty that, but she would tell me she enjoyed coming in. I mean, so it is going outside of yourself. How do I make this easy for everybody else? If you don't do that, if it's all about me, and yeah, I was a wreck. I was a mess. But if I made that all about the pain that I had at everything, you're like a black hole. You suck everything into you and you make your own life miserable. And you make everybody else's miserable. I love my husband. I didn't want him to be miserable. It was bad enough that he had to see me in traction and surgeries and scars and wounds that we won't even talk about. Why would I want to make him more miserable? On top of that, my mother is in her 80s and her husband were driving there 3 hours from their home to come spend the night with me. My mom, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're driving. No, it's fine. Don't worry about me. Why would I want to make her miserable?
Right.
So even though the other stuff was what it was going to be, I was going to heal or it wasn't going to heal. We're going to amputate or we're not going to, it's those things had to be taken care of every day. And I won't tell you that was easy, but it was a choice every day to say, this is what it is. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I'm not making this the end of your life right now because my life was altered significantly.
Yeah. I think the analogy of the black hole is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I think that's really helpful to have that image because as the saying goes, hurt people.
Yeah.
But healed people heal people.
Mm.
And that's the path that you chose.
I will always choose that path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. We need those people. We need you. So lastly is change and resilience. So this is something I relate to because like you, I moved around a lot, right? 12 different elementary schools under this belt. So we share this understanding that being open to change is a necessary component to learning how to fit in somewhere new as the new kid, right?
Yeah.
So talk about practicing and learning to be excited about change that was birthed, and that's something that birthed resilience for you, especially over the past year.
Okay. So you just mentioned it. As I was a military kid, we moved both. I was born in the middle and moved to both coasts and stayed at my grandmother's in between. And you just did. I mean, there's no choice about that. No. You just did it. I ended up moving around a bit myself and then married a guy who became ordained. So we followed his job, we followed my job, we followed his job, we followed my job. So to me, that was always exciting to think about, well, what can I do next? Not, I'm going to die inside again because we're moving and I have to make new friends. Whatever. Well, what can I do next? What's the next place like? How can we make that an exciting thing, even though I don't ever want to pack my dishes again? Okay. I probably will have one more.
Yeah.
But it's learning to look for what can come out of it. What is the good piece out of this? My son has inherited that as well. At one point, we knew we were going to leave Virginia and move to Chicago, and I looked at him and said, "Okay, Tom, go upstairs and pack like you're never coming back." And he went, "Now?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're leaving tomorrow." He said, "Okay." So we did, and it turned out to be a great adventure. But it's all in the way you look at it.
Right.
So, okay, yeah, this is a drag. I don't know what's going to happen again. But at the same time, I don't know what's going to happen again. Let's find the best thing that could happen. Oh, I got to have a new house. Well, what would I like to have this time? What's the best there is to offer? It's looking for the best. And again, it's not focusing on what's this little nagging thing right now. It's not the nitty details about packing 80 boxes of books. We've hauled a lot of books. Yeah. But it's okay, what do we get to do next? And how does this fit in the big picture? What do I want to do with my life? What's in store for me? What does God have in store for me? And how do we make this next thing move into that? So it's not the details are a drag, and somebody's got to deal with them, and they always have to be dealt with. But how can we make that blossom into something else with what we're doing? So the change piece of it, a lot of it is practice. You look at where you are right now, and just because you have faith and a good attitude and community, you could still stay in the same 20-mile radius that you were born in and have that. But would you be prepared to have to move 100 miles away or do something different because you have ailing parents that are elsewhere? Or but some people could pick up and do that. But I think a lot of people who've not experienced change and practicing change would not have the resilience to continue, or it would be very painful.
Right.
So my suggestion to people is practice change. Get out of your circle, do something different, go eat something different, go to a restaurant that you always order the same thing, which I do. Because I go to that place for the fish and chips and I look at everything else in the menu and I always get fish and chips. Try something different. Just practice little things, because it makes a difference in the long run about what you can do when you're surprised by change. Because there's a lot of different kinds of change, right?
Right.
Good change. You got a promotion. Bad change. Somebody's getting a divorce. Some, tragic change. My life changed on July 12th. There's no denying that. I'm not in the same shape. I don't look the same. It doesn't mean that I change. I change my environment. I change where I'm going. I change how I get around, the tools that I use to get there. So it's practicing all the change as you go, noticing what's around you. I grew up with my mom working with handicapped people, so I knew all that stuff existed and that people lived normal lives.
Yeah.
With the tools that they had, observing, being part of change that happens and not being afraid of it.
Yeah.
So that when something big happens, oh, this is change again. But I've done a whole bunch of little changes and I understand that you get on the other side of it and something else happens. So the resilience piece of it is kind of built in.
Right.
Now I've been told I'm tenacious. And
I'm shocked.
So I don't know if everybody's got that built in. We might call it bulldog. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I am. But
good.
So yes, that helps. But I don't think that you have to be tenacious to be resilient.
That's good. Do you hear that, everybody?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
So I think the resilience comes with being aware of change and not being afraid of it, and then embracing what comes beyond it and looking toward that to get there.
Yeah.
Because you have to do little things every day. And whether it's wake up and I feel lousy today, I am getting out of bed anyway. I'm doing one thing. And the one thing's taking a shower. And okay, I'll get dressed. That's two. So
those are your little pieces of resilience.
Yeah. So you do the little thing every day. Because, if I had stayed in bed, I don't know what would have happened the second day.
Yeah.
So it's prompting yourself, getting beyond it, getting beyond yourself. I have to do this one thing. Yeah. And then the one things add up.
Yeah. Would you say change is something that happens to you, but resilience is what follows, right? That is the choice. We're talking a lot about all of this being a choice. Is you can choose to be resilient or not. Yes. And those little choices that you get to make, right? The shower, getting into bed, those are the little pieces of resilience that kind of set the little stones for you to keep going.
Yeah, I think we could say that.
Yeah. Wow. I know that life of moving around though and embracing all right, let's see what goes on. And it's let's see what happens, and do the have to, right? Do I have to do this? Or I'm going to choose to do this. I'm going to make this happen and we're going to embrace it.
Yeah. Even when you have to, choosing to make it not a bad thing.
make it not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. So you told me in a call that you had heard a quote that said, tell your friends you love them and make it weird.
Yep.
Shortly after, I sent you a video from renowned leadership guru Marcus Buckingham talking about the force of love in the workplace, as opposed to transactionalism, right? Okay, I'll do this for you because you did this for me.
Yeah.
Mickie, I think you're onto something. And you had really talked about this with the community and the way your worlds overlapped.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the importance of creating, building on, and nurturing community, about a faith that is a grounding force, an inward attitude that propelled you to not give up on yourself or make yourself a victim. And in the same breath, how many people you can touch with kindness, even when you don't have to. Lastly, we've touched on change and resilience and how being open to change, however big, small, difficult, or easy, gives way to resilience. All of this has multitudes of layers and meaning for all of us. Your story is transcendent, which means it will go on through time and just keep going. It will be recorded and watched again and again and again. So thank you so much for just being here today. Do you have any last thoughts as we move on and go into Q&A after this?
The biggest thing I'd like to say to this audience is that I just had my 9th anniversary with Blue, as heading up the Blue benefits team. And I have said for years, this is the best job I've ever had. I had no idea what that would mean. It has been a great community. I've had interactions, not just with Blue benefits, but with the entire group of Blue. And that has been very strong influence in recovery, I guess is what I want to say. I was so amazed at this community and how I was loved within with the cards that were sent from different offices. And we were talking this about a little bit before. I would get a packet of cards just from like everybody in the Columbus, Indiana office who pitched in, big fat packet.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just that. When the accident happened, my poor husband, he sees the shape I'm in. We just bought a fixer-up house we're still fixer-uppering 3 years later. And all this is going through his mind. Oh my gosh, I could lose my wife. I could lose the house. I could lose everything in this. And he called Nancy Rife. What do I need to do? Mickey's been in this 4-wheel accident. She's, do not worry about anything. You will not pay for anything. She's on her way home from a work thing. We've got you. And Blue has been true to that from beginning to end. And still, I could not have known how much Blue could take care of me as an employee or would. And so I would just tell anyone who's relatively new or hasn't experienced this that Blue really does care. All the way from Brad down, everyone, I can still will get a note from somebody saying, how are you doing? It is not just something we put in the words that we say are our mission statement. It is inculcated. It is part of who we are. And I'm happy to be part of that still.
I'm happy you're a part of it.
Oh, thank you very much.
And you were beloved. I mean,
it is amazing to find that.
Yeah.
And think that I was working in the background and to have that come out from all of the seams.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And now here we sit, fireside chat.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are you ready for some Q&A?
Oh, give it to me.
All right. All right, party people. I have your Q&A here for Mickie. And you can submit. Okay, here is one question. How do you see your story continuing to inspire change and growth in others, both personally and professionally?
I think that I was feeling called to speak publicly for some time before this. And I would actually tell Joe, my husband, I I I think I'm supposed to do this thing, but I don't really know what and what to say. I mean, do people want to like invite people to talk about retirement plans? Probably not. I mean, I do that already.
You can make it spicy.
Yeah, it will make it as spicy as possible, but it's still a really small crowd. Um, so I just had that in the back of my mind, and as I get older, oh, maybe that's something I could do as a transition and at retirement or something to that effect. A couple weeks after the accident, I just looked at him and said, know what I'm supposed to talk about now. And because we are kind of a weird humor family after my amputation, I said, well, I've got a visual now. I got to get up front. And so this is where I feel called to go, is to spend some of my time out doing speaking and talking about resilience and change and the things that we talked about today and what that means. How do we get there? How do we use that?
Yeah.
I also want to write a book about the experience and how that has related to the other things. So those are in the thinking on stages still.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get to the making that happen soon.
Yeah.
I have been asked to speak a few times and
good. Have you done, is this your first time speaking on this, or have you done this?
No, I've done a couple different podcasts and I've asked to speak at a conference
Not
in
your first rodeo.
August. Oh, and I love doing it. I've loved speaking in the retirement plan arena. Have done some of that as well.
Yeah, of course.
So,
and then you're also meeting with my friend Lindsay Picardo.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very excited for that.
She is dynamic, and we'll be speaking at our women's conference in January again too. So
2 firecrackers.
Yeah.
I love it. A question I have for you is, you are a half full kind of gal, right?
Yeah.
The cup is full for you. What has been the harder parts of all of this?
I think reality kind of hits me in the face sometimes. But when I first came home after months in Cincinnati and then another month or 6 weeks, I've forgotten already. That's kind of funny. In the rehab place here, where everything is at the right level and the chairs are set so you can swap over from a wheelchair, okay, and I had physical therapy for 3 hours a day, so all of that, and then I went home, and my bathroom door is not wide enough for the wheelchair, so I had to get in there with a walker, and we have steps to every entrance in our house, so all of these things had to be modified. We're in the fixer-upper. I had just taken the kitchen down to studs and remodeled the whole thing. It's not really wide enough or practical for a wheelchair. But so, I'm cutting things on the counter like this. I was brought to tears one day because all of the baseboards my husband had just replaced, I was just scraping the heck out of them with the wheelchair wheels as I go around the corners, and Joe comes in the room and says, why are you crying? I said, I'm ruining all of the baseboards you just put in. He says, well, I can paint them. But you just put them in. He says, but it's just paint. Yeah. I said, oh, okay. It's like, so it's, oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Or the first time that last January, I went to a conference, brought my mom as my attendant. She had a blast. And I was trying to pack from a wheelchair with the suitcase on the bed that you can't see in when you're sitting down because it's up here, and I'm this time comes, what's the matter? I said, slip my clothes, I can't get them in there, and I'm just and I don't even know why I'm worried about it because nobody cares what I'm wearing. And he's like, you're right. I said, I know, and I don't know what I'm saying. It's just getting over those little hurdles of what I have done, hundreds of times before. Yeah. I was traveling 30,000 miles a year the year before COVID. So slinging some stuff in a suitcase and getting in the car and doing that was nothing. But here I am struggling to get my nightgown folded and into the suitcase or to see where it went. So it's just some of those reality checks, and then laughing because nobody cares what I'm going to wear or what, if it's in there straight or whatever. And yeah, so some of those things.
It's a very real thing. And, you came in here today and you had to use restroom. And my mind immediately went to, we are not ADA compliant as far as how our doors open. It's just not an ADA friendly environment. And I'm mad at myself for not thinking about that always, right? That this should just be an automatic thing that comes to mind. Can Mickie wash her hands? Is it going to be okay? Like, how tall is the sink?
This really, it is ADA compliant, as far as those things go.
Yeah.
But everything's graded. It's not the worst place I've been, but
Good.
But I was invited to somebody's house for a party next week, and I just got a note and said, it's on the second floor with stairs. Are you going to be able to manage that? I said, nope, I'll be in the wheelchair until at least probably Christmas.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, we should change where it is. So it is that sometimes is hard for me that they're going to change where the party is so that I can go. So sometimes it would be really easy to say, oh, just never mind, I won't go. But I want to hang with those ladies, and I'm happy to have them accommodate that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are things that I can't do, and that's a reality check.
Yeah.
A little side note, my mom she worked with handicapped folks as I was growing up, with the vocational rehab agency in Miami. She was part of the group that presented the ADA legislation in Washington, D.C., and I was with her and she handed it off. So I have thanked her more than once recently for being part of all that. Yeah.
Full circle. Wow. We have another question. What advice do you give to someone who is going through a tough time?
I think it depends. It depends on what it is and where you are and what your situation is. So I, I think the best advice I can probably give is look for the bird, look for the thing. What do you love? I had a friend of mine, right, just at this conference I went to in October, who told me that not the first time that I'd been such an inspiration to her. I said, oh my gosh, so I never know what to say when people say that. And she told me about a horrible incident where she had been attacked. And it was a horrible thing. And she said, but I would look at you and I said, if Mickie Murphy's getting out of bed, and then I can get out of bed. So she was tracking with me on that. But then, so it was all I could do to keep from breaking down when she's telling me that, because that was awesome but horrible at the same time. But then she said to me, is there anywhere that you can just be still? Is there anything that you do where you can just be quiet and not think about all the things that have happened and all the things that could happen? She was a bit of a worry weren't perfections. I said, sitting and watching my birds. When I'm just sitting there, I'm not thinking about the 200 emails that I have in my email inbox. I'm looking at them, focused on the color and what they're doing. And oh my gosh, it's a pileated woodpecker. It's geeky, but it's totally focused on them. It's outside of me. And she kind of thought about it for a second. She says, I'm like that when I go hike. She lives in Arizona. When I'm hiking and I'm out in nature, and I said, you're focused on something else. Yeah. So I would say that's the thing to look for. You look for the bird. I like to watch my feeders. She likes to hike. Find something outside of yourself that if it's beautiful, awesome. You like felting, go color, or do something else where it's not just all inward. You're focused on something else.
Yes. Yeah. Kind of a side note with that. Just thinking about, I'm about to go really deep right quick, and be very vulnerable. Just this idea of the things that connect you, right? So she felt connected to your story and started drawing from that.
Yeah.
So last year I had a miscarriage, and there was this thing inside of me that said, I know I'm not alone.
Mm.
I know I'm not alone because people go through this. I mean, 75% of pregnancies end in a miscarriage, right? And so there's this well that I got to draw from that everybody has already got to experience before. So many people, unfortunately, have had to experience before, right?
Yeah.
And so I focused on that well and I drew from that. And I said, I have to draw from there. I have to focus there.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I will become the dark pit
Right.
just bitterness and sadness.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And there is something to say about watching other people and say, okay, they got through it.
I can do it too.
Yeah.
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 And that's, I guess, where with that question, part of what I want to say is you need a prequel. Find your community. And if it is something new like that, find your community.
Yeah.
My niece started a group like that because she went through the same thing. And
Wow.
it is, my secured group who had to deal with those regulations. It's find somebody else who has been through it and good. And
Community.
yeah, that thing.
Let's see if there's any more that came through. Anyone else out there before we log off here? I know you've named your prosthetic Betty. How did it get its name and why?
This is I don't know why Betty, but it just happened. And it is it's a whole lot easier to say than my prosthetic leg. Same as the guy who works on the thing itself is my leg guy because prosthesist is even harder to say than prosthetic. And as you say, I'm a half full gal, and Betty just is a whole lot easier to say and to say, oh, I'm tired of Betty, I'm putting her in the corner, or she's in timeout. She's in timeout right now, has been for about 6 weeks, and will be a couple more. And when she's ready to come out and behave, then we will get her back out of the corner.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more fun to do that. And it's, I think, also not off-putting to people. Some people cannot talk about that or don't want to hear me talk about that or that I'm wearing a prosthetic leg. I told you before we did this that I would bring Betty and we would talk about whatever anybody wants. I'm still that. I'm open. Anybody wants to talk about what it's like to wear a prosthetic leg. It is learning to walk again.
Yeah.
But we're resilient. We're born that way. We're meant to learn to walk by getting up every time we fall down. So all those things, that's another 15 minutes. But Betty just came out of that. I'm not calling this thing that's attached to me. And I have a friend who calls what the medical community now calls my residual leg, but it's part of me. This is my Betty leg. Betty. So I have Betty and my Betty leg. I said, okay, I like that a whole lot better than stump. So it's part of me and will be, and that's the way it goes. I'm gonna have fun with it.
Yeah. Betty's just helping you boop around.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, she's just getting you around. All right, I think we have hit our Q&A. Okay, I'll read this to you though.
Okay.
Mickie, for such a time as this, you were chosen to inspire and encourage. The space you lived in previously was too small for the contributions you were created to make in life. Thank you for embracing your new space with positivity and great energy. We love you.
Thank you so much.
So thank you for joining us. It's a gift to sit across from you, Mickie, and to do this. And when Michelle called me and we talked through this about her grand idea, I said, let's do a fireside chat. I have no idea what that looks like. There probably won't be a fire, and that's okay. But then Ryan McLean and Sam Christ just made it happen in conference room 2 in Carmel. And here we are.
Yay.
So we just want to give a huge thanks to those behind the scenes, which are Ryan, our unbelievably talented videographer, and Sam Christ, our marketing manager queen. And of course, Michelle Trowell, with whom this would not have been possible. So
Very,
Thank you,
yes,
Mickie.
very much.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us here today.
Mhm.